was most excited for ETH 2.0 because this is like, so this is a development that I, as one who was part of the Ethereum Foundation early on, kind of like looked forward to. I mean, Serenity and all of these things we wanted to get to, that was like the big goal. So it was really exciting to see this launch and see the Beacon Chain launch. I think this was the biggest part. This is for sure also the biggest technological innovation that happened in 2020 in the blockchain space, in my opinion. There was a lot of, I mean, what really like took off was DeFi. That is a little bit interesting to see because I created ERC20 and this kind of created all of these tokens, and now seeing what comes out 3 years later, like how this whole decentralized finance movement actually really just moving to the next level. So from just building simple tokens and doing something with them, we're now combining them in more complex protocols, and then making outcomes something even more new and something different, and that somehow relies to each other. So it's really exciting to see this and to see what like the experimentation that happens. At the same time, my personal interest for finance dimmed down a lot. So I'm more focusing on the digital lifestyle and the social experiences of blockchain rather than the financial ones, because I think ultimately that's what brings us the mainstream adoption. So ERC20, I mean, it was a development of multiple people. The initial draft came from Vitalik. I changed it up and wrote a proper specification. And then we were a few people discussing changing a few small pieces. So it was anyway a community effort already, but I didn't give it much credit at the time. I really just did it because I felt, you know, somebody needs to write a specification that is like more clear, readable, and structured. And I thought tokens are cool. Yes, we can do tokens. For me, it was a bit boring because it's such a simple thing and such a simple piece you can do on Ethereum. Ethereum is just so much more. Ethereum, like blockchains, can do unlimited things. And yeah, but the focus went really in that direction and became a pillar of the blockchain space. It's the actual fulfillment of what the Mastercoin community thought will be the case, right? It was like the actual real token economy. I mean, it also took me quite a while. It took me like about a year or so to even realize that, okay, all of this ICO stuff, yeah, that was, you know, came through that. I didn't really notice it actually for a while. But yeah, I like to actually do things that have a big impact and that like are used by a lot of people. And I did that also with my other work at Ethereum, building the first Web3 browser and the developer tool, the most used developer tool in the Ethereum space and so on. And I'm planning to do that further on with other things. So yeah, it's cool. It's nice to see all what happens out of it. I mean, I think in terms of development, I think not so positive developments is, I think the space started to settle more. Regulations started to kick more in. I mean, this is like literally they start to really think of how we should regulate this. This can go sometimes really wrong. I think like the direction it takes in America is bad. I don't think you want to put everything now under like a securities rule and make it super complicated for any new thing to happen. There's a lot more people who start to understand that from the old world, and they kind of want to interfere. That's not very smart because the technology can do so much more, and trying to apply old school laws to that is simply stifling. It's not bringing it anywhere. So I rather want to have the sandbox model where you experiment, where things can happen, and then we can see where it goes. And find solutions that actually regulate on chain. For example, I created the reversible ICO, which is not just an ICO, but it's an ICO where people reserve tokens and buy them over time, so that they can return the still reserved ones if they would think that the project didn't work out or they changed their mind or they need their ether back. So that's the way how far I think you can regulate. You literally give people safe by design systems, and then it's just safer than it ever can be. Any other paper regulation will only lead to like year-long processes and court laws and lawsuits that bring nobody anywhere money on the end anyway. So it's just a waste of time. I mean, if you now basically force everybody to have a banking license and to do all these checks, they are sometimes not even necessary on that level, then you just kill it. And that's not smart. And you're not protecting anybody for that matter. By the way, especially with a stable coin, there's no speculation on a stable coin. I mean, it's a stable coin for that reason. I mean, the problem is we're currently in this kind of transition time between the pre-internet era and the politicians that literally almost all come out of that because they're more in their 40, 50, 60s. And then the internet. And the people who make the decisions are from that pre-internet era. And they try to judge it this way, and they try to influence and then make decisions this way. And they for sure try to the best of their abilities. But we have now technologies that completely change the game. They completely change the way of how you can do things. I mean, there is like a security that is literally governmentless because it's mathematically. So it's security by design that can be possible. You can like make systems far smarter and protect way more people than just trying to create like or adopt the old system. So Luxo, it's like my new endeavor, and it's a big endeavor because basically I want to take the technology that is developed in Ethereum, which allows smart contract blockchains, to bring to an audience that's like non-tech, that's the normal social media people, that's the normal internet user, that's the crowd who is not technical, who doesn't want to have wallet seeds and backup phrases and private keys and understand gas or any of those things. This is people who would love to use blockchain, and that's for sure. There's millions of use cases that we can think of, but that are not. They're just, for them it's too foreign. For them it's too complicated. It's too much finance. It's too much money back and forth. So Luxo, we call it the new digital lifestyle. And in fact, Corona in 2020 has really helped a lot in that narrative, because now everybody realizes that digital is here and digital is here to stay and digital is first. One thing is VR. I mean, virtual reality, here I have one here. Virtual reality will be a big part, not as clunky as this one, but virtual reality will be a very big part of our lives in the next 10, 20 years. And in that virtual spaces, we want to own things, we want to have things, and we want to have things not just in one game. And we don't want to have an account for every game. Well, I want to have an account that can live everywhere, and it's the same persona. And we are building basically tools to create virtual avatars, to sell digital clothes, to create your own digital clothes. We see a lot of social media things and community interactions or VIPs. So for example, the real tokenization, in my opinion, that will happen will be around people, brands, groups, ideas, rather than money. So Lux is for all those things. So we're building a blockchain on the one hand, and on the other hand, which is an EVM chain, so it works like Ethereum. It's literally 100% compatible. It has a different consensus than the current Ethereum mainnet. But then I'm also proposing new standards. One is called ERC 725, which is a standard for on-chain accounts. If you have on-chain accounts, then you can have a way better user experience. You can have an upgradable security, and you can do the same thing like every private key can do. So this new way of interacting with the blockchain will allow these new people or this new audience to actually start to use it. So basically, ERC 725 is a way of how can you interact on-chain. And it's a better way because it allows you to include security, upgrade security, include information. So we're building a website called universalprofile.cloud that literally allows you to create an on-chain blockchain-based profile that looks like a normal account. And that can be your account that you can take into different worlds, into different websites, into different places. But there's also the account that can hold, can be your avatar, and can be dressed with things or can own things. So that's kind of new digital world needs this base layer, and it needs a different user experience. And in a way, it's an evolution from the things that I defined and developed in Ethereum. At the beginning, we did things simple. We allowed people to create their own keys and then interact with smart contracts. And we built Web3.js that allows you to do that easier. But now we need more abstraction. We need these on-chain accounts, and we need an easy way to pay for gas and transaction relay services and so on. So all of these pieces we're building on Luxo to make it easier for a startup to come and build something with some basic building blocks like identity tokens we already have, obviously, but also better NFTs to yeah, bring up a new economy. So we need the building blocks. It's all about standards. It's interesting for me to watch this because I'm being part of Ethereum in the very early days, and we like really just figured stuff out. But we kind of could all see already all the pieces that would be needed. You know, all of these middle layers that will exist, all of these extra tools that you can build around it, all of the standards we need to define, and all of the other evolutions that would happen. And it's interesting to see that this happens, but some happen slower than you want, and others happen faster than you want. So it's kind of interesting to see this happening. You know, now it's actually like we have, for example, in the Web3 world. So Web3.js, for example, was a very important tool because it allowed you as a developer to really easily interact with smart contracts on the way you would do this with JavaScript. It's more the way how people are used to it. I think that's also one of the factors why Ethereum became important and adopted a lot, because it was just so much more easy and so much more developer friendly than Bitcoin, for example, was at the time. But now we have all of these middle layers, like the graph, for example. It's a caching layer on the end. There are benefits to it, but there also are problems, because now we are using a little bit of verifiability, right? Because a caching layer, anybody can just manipulate data in a caching layer. It's not so proven anymore as it is if you run your own node, for example. But it's important. These accesses to the blockchain and a high-speed access, fast reading to build up nice user experiences is very necessary. So my credo always is decentralization as a tool, not as a requirement. Because if we build things in the direction where they can decentralize, even if we put very centralized layers already in the middle, it will eventually go there once the technology is ready. But we're not stifling it by trying to make it overly decentralized. In a way, a learning from the Mist browser. So the Mist browser was the first fully decentralized browser. It had only smart contracts. You download the application through Swarm. Every interaction there was the way it should be in the Web3, but the user experience could stifle sometimes and could be slow sometimes. What will happen now? We have these basic tools that are improving. I think we are going next to see different user categories coming in, and that's actually what we're driving for with Luxo. The ordinary user, people that don't know that they're using blockchain, applications that don't look like they're blockchain, where blockchain becomes the tool and not like this, the big title in the front of your app. It's like, oh, this is blockchain. Looks the same, but it's blockchain. Actually, you want to make the blockchain disappear. You want to make it the tool in the background. And that really brings the user adoption, because it doesn't scare away people and thinking that, oh my God, if I do something wrong, everything is gone. I think like we see a new kind of user coming in, and I think it will move very strongly towards NFTs and to non-financial use cases. It's far too financial focused. It is a very narrow and niche audience that you find here. It's mainly men, it's people that have money or somehow are willing to trade. The ordinary user is probably not only man, and also not always interested in like spending $100 or $500 into a random like tryout or game. So it's a different kind of user, but it brings in a new economy, and I think it's the essential. This digital and NFT economy is essential for creating this Ready Player One world that's going to happen and that needs a certain infrastructure. But yeah, on the end, it's all about standards. It's all about defining the basic pieces. So I think 2021, we will see the first big moves in this direction. And I think 2022, we will see, it will be a very different audience in the blockchain space. And it will be a very different size also. So we will probably see a lot of growth coming up. So I do think like we are seeing also what you kind of could already see in the last years, but we are seeing governments and the big players becoming more and more interested in blockchain, and they will come out with their own things, like the Chinese government did. The European government will have a digital euro, and other governments and other bigger organizations will actually start to utilize blockchain. It will be a bit more of a more or less centralized setup, even though they are also thriving to decentralization. Because decentralization is actually a very useful tool because it actually removes you from responsibility. And who wants to have a responsibility? Everybody wants to put it to the edges. And that's what blockchain really can help with. So it's a natural tendency that we are seeing. And I think more and more systems over the coming years will be decentralized just because it's the better way to do it. And that allows more freedom and more room for experimentation and less room for control. So I'm very excited, looking forward of how these things develop. But we have to make sure that we're not stifling it with regulation. That's very important.
If you like that, come back for more. All you have to do is click like, always comment, we love that, and subscribe. And don't forget to watch the next one.